Hi everyone, welcome back to the Questioning Behaviour podcast. My name is Sarah and I'm here with...
Merle van den Akker, as always.
You're the dummy that don't believe in science. All your projects always be denying.
And we're also joined by a third person, as is tradition on this podcast. It's not just us. So without further ado, our mystery guest, please introduce yourself to the audience. Who are you? What do you do? And how did you get there?
My name is Essi, Kujansuu, and I'm a postdoc at the University of Innsbruck, and I do behavioral economics. And I just finished my PhD. I defended last month from the university in Florence called European University Institute.
All right, congratulations.
Yeah, huge congratulations.
And what we do here is field experiments on credence goods. So these are goods where experts have upper hand. They know actually what's wrong with your car, and you as a customer might not know, and hence you might be frauded a little bit. That's the
All right. And how did that flow from your PhD? Was that also what you did in your PhD? Was it somewhat aligned?
It's a bit parallel. So I did my PhD on experimental economics, and I did two lab experiments. One of them went online, and when I was in the job market, I sort of said to everyone that I'm interested in expanding my skill set to field experiments, because they are the ones that I find most interesting when I'm reading the literature often.
Fair enough.
So did you refer to these goods as, was it credence goods?
Yes.
Oh, I've never heard of that term before. Like, could you give us a bit of a background? Like, what is a credence good? Why should we be studying it? Like, what's the value?
Yeah, I will give you two examples. The first one was about the car mechanics fixing your car, and you don't necessarily know what's there to be fixed. So hence they might actually fraud you. They might say, look, you need to change your oils, you need to do this, you need to do that. And in the end, overcharge you, overprovide you services. And the point here is that you don't know as a customer, if you're not an expert yourself, if you got overprovided or overcharged. And also doctors are one another example. You have a symptom, they prescribe you so many tests and so on, and you might not actually, be able to judge, was there too much or was it too little?
Yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. Now, at least we are on the same page with regards to credence goods, or I suppose maybe credence services in this case. But so you said yourself you did online experiments during your PhD. Now you're doing field experiments in the postdoc. Was that entirely in the same topic? So would you argue this is a very, very natural progression from one into the other?
So I did gift exchange, and then I did some choice architecture. And I can see a lot of areas where you have topics that overlap, but in general, I didn't do anything on credence goods while in my PhD. So there are a lot of similar themes like trust and how do you create environments in which you can have more fraud or less fraud, but so connecting to choice architecture, but no, it's a bit, parallel path.
Yeah, fair enough. Then I suppose the real question becomes then maybe even not like how did you get into the postdoc I do want to know how you got into the postdoc, but we'll get to that later. But maybe the main question then becomes not what got you interested in the topic of the postdoc, but what got you interested in the topic of the PhD? Let's start at the start.
Right. So I totally changed my topic in the PhD. So that's the short version. The long version is I had this course in my first year on experimental economics, and I was totally sold on the methodology. I have background like doing micro data analysis and so on. I had interest in similar topics like what is fair and so on, but sort of my future supervisor really sold me the idea that experiments is how to expand our knowledge.
Fair enough. Yeah, but so what was your initial topic of the PhD then?
I wanted to look at fairness in the labor markets, look at how they adjust downwards, and use like lots of micro data from Finland, for example, and see how wage negotiations go and so on. But I had no clear strategy. The program is such that people say, look, just present a 3-page proposal. We have exams in the first year. You're not committing to anything.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. No, that's so for you, it was, you were attracted to the methodology, and the PhD seemed like the most natural place to learn how to actually use it. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's pretty similar to why I did a PhD rather than tied to a topic. So given that your PhD topic changed, do you feel like actually it all worked out in the end? Or, like, what was it like to go through a sort of oh no, I'm not studying this anymore, I have to rethink everything?
It was quite natural because we really have only courses in the first year. And then for the summer, you write your summer paper. And at that time, I had sort of found an interest in the method. And I was still searching the topic. But for me, it was all sort of, it worked out. But I know that it depends on programs. Like sometimes you start on something on day one, and there it might have been a little bit harder to sort of readjust yourself.
Yeah, it like you said, it really depends on programs. Sometimes it even depends on the university or the supervisor that you're with. Did you have to switch supervisors, or did you not? Was your supervisor well versed enough in both?
So what happens also is that we get supervisors only in the beginning of the second year.
Oh, okay. Right. So this is quite different from what I know about US and UK programs. So maybe talk us a bit. So I don't know how well you know the structure of a US or a UK program, but maybe talk us about a bit of the differences that you've experienced. I think that might give us some more context. So how is your program different?
So really, like we start, we are about 20, and we have just quite strict course schedule, and we do the micro, macro, and metrics basic courses, and then towards the spring of the first year, you start to work on this summer paper that sort of shows to the faculty what you're interested in. It gets read by a couple of professors, so I got my first supervisor from him reading the summer paper, and then the second one I requested because I wanted to do experiments.
Okay, yeah. From if that is the structure, then I suppose everything you've told us so far is like a relatively natural development. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, the summer paper, I don't think we really have an equivalent of, maybe just a research proposal, but that's how you get into the PhD, not how you continue the PhD. No, fair enough. And then I suppose, I mean, one thing we're always curious about, not that we're, not that we're negative people, but the PhD, or at least, people that have been in the PhD for a prolonged period of time, they tend to have a plethora of negative experiences. Not everyone, but, negative experiences are inevitable in this program. Did you have a very negative experience yourself, and how did you deal with that?
I sort of had a really negative experience with the first project. There was a lot of bureaucratic stuff happening. I was running my experiment. Suddenly, people were saying, no, you can't do this. And then I'm like, but I was told by that. And then there was a lot of this gray area, and I got really frustrated. Then I got my data, and then I was writing my paper, first time ever. And that was also a really difficult thing. I really didn't. So my first experiment was about interactions. So I couldn't make this easy table of, look, treatment A, treatment B, look, what's the difference? So that was also harsh. But then in the end, my supervisor sort of saved me in the situation. He was like, look, okay, it's my turn. We agreed we will co-author this. Just leave the paper to me. And I totally dropped it, and I started finding a new topic for the second project. And when I returned back to the project after he had gone through it, I'm like, okay, no, this reads like a paper. Like, well done, team.
Okay, so then your supervisor is a very involved writer.
Yeah, so he was. We had this discussion in the second year of PhD, so the first year of our cooperation, that he usually co-authors the first paper with his students, and if he doesn't do, like, he's a relatively experienced guy. If he, in his experience, if his students don't do this, not many good things happen to them, and in that sense, I sort of see why it works out. I wrote my paper, but it was childish or like not mature. Didn't read like an economics paper. And when he rewrote the ideas in this format that economists write papers in, it felt like an actual paper.
Okay, so what would you say is really the biggest difference between your version of that paper and the collaborative effort? What did you learn from the experience?
It's interesting question. So I didn't feel like my theory was an interesting thing. And when we sort of rewrote it, doing the basic assumptions and whatnot, it actually felt like a theory that somebody else might, understand, connect to the literature, so on. That was sort of the biggest thing. And then later on, when we did the data analysis, there, you have this look, okay, no, we do this way, we use this t-test rather than that, we permutate the observation, all these sort of things coming from experience, not requiring me to, go around asking, what's the difference here? What should I use? Those were sort of, I think, the two main things, the theory and the metrics rigor.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it must be quite interesting to see something that you've been working on quite in depth being written up by someone else in this really professional way. You sort of completely recontextualize, oh, wait, I did have a good idea in the end. That's really interesting. And I guess on a similar vein, I'm wondering, in your experience, what was the biggest lesson that the PhD taught you that you weren't expecting to learn going into it?
A big question. I have two answers. One is very simple. I didn't think I would learn coding and understand how internet works, for example. In terms of myself, it's taught me a lot about boundaries. I'm starting to, learn to separate my research from myself. So if somebody criticizes my paper, I'm learning it's not me. It's, I just didn't think far enough. And related to this, that talking with people, asking their opinions early on, how important that is for my own thinking. That's a lot of little things about my personality and how I function as a researcher.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people have learned that in a PhD, even if they didn't think they would. On a similar vein, or in a similar vein, what is advice that you would give to PhD students, either new or current PhD students, that you're like, yeah, this advice, or in hindsight, this has helped me out a lot, and I'm sure it would help out others as well?
Mm-hmm. So I've just gone through the job market, so my views might be a bit different because of that. But they would be working on these general skills, like writing your CVs and motivation letters, learning how to pitch your projects, presentation skills, all of these little general skills that somehow, at least I felt in my department, we were not encouraged to take these courses that are for everybody in the university and not just for economists. in the job market, I could see a lot of how people do it in other universities, and how much they do, for example, interview training. And I'm like, this could have been useful also for us.
Okay, fair. So I mean, get trained in the requirements of the job market. It makes for a nice segue, because we are interested in your job market experience as well. So, in as much detail as you like, please explain to us the process of you being in a PhD. In your case, I'm assuming almost exclusively applying to postdocs, and just how you felt that process was, what it taught you. Just outline the whole experience for us, because we're very, very curious.
So for me, it was stressful, but last year was a difficult year. In the end, if I think about myself and my cohort that was there with me, everybody worked out for everybody. But there were a little bit of moments where you're like, I have only 4 interviews. You have 15. What's going on?
Right.
But it's so you're not supposed to compare yourself, because you're all in different disciplines. You have all different kinds of profiles, but you do. And if you're the last one to get the interview or the offer, you start to doubt, like, am I in the right place? Am I really doing what I? It's not that. Let me put it the other way. I thought I'm good at this, and I thought I enjoy it, but now all this is making me doubt myself and choices. And then, the next day you get a couple of interviews and you're like, okay, it works out, but it doesn't take away that experience of doubting everything. So it was a roller coaster.
I can imagine.
Yeah. And with last year being so difficult as well, particularly, like, I guess, could you, in your opinion, what was it specifically about last year that made it more difficult? I mean, we know, obviously, maybe there were just less jobs. Was it just that there were just less jobs, or were there other factors that made trying to get hired on the job market just incredibly difficult?
So I flipped the question around. What was easy? And I think doing interviews online, you get used to it. You sort of get the hang of Zoom and how to do presentations, and it really cuts the travel down. So I can't really compare what it is to travel on the other side of the world to do these conferences and run from hotel to another. It sounds quite stressful. On the other hand, you're isolated, and you miss all these little interactions. So we would, communicate a lot with my letter writers, but it was all on the topic, and none of it was like meeting on the corridor, having a coffee and asking, like, how are you doing? So all of that, and the fact that you wouldn't see your friends and couldn't, get a beer because you're all scattered around Europe. That was, I think, that made it much harder. Sure, you were there. A lot of texts were flying, and we would have these panic calls. But it was quite a lonely experience in that sense.
Yeah, no, I can imagine it would be. I think it's been a lonely experience for everyone, regardless of what they were doing. If I may ask, did you exclusively apply to postdocs? Because you did say that, this process did make you sometimes doubt if you were, your words, not mine, any good at what you did. And have you considered switching to industry at all, or were you well grounded in your belief that you wanted to stay in academia?
Right. So to go back a little bit in my timeline, I'm not one of those people who plan their lives like, I want to be a professor in X university in 10 years. I'm more of I like doing this, let's keep on doing it type of person, which, depends on your personality. So that was sort of my thinking. I like research. I like what academics do. I like the academic freedom. Let's see if I can continue on that path. And I applied basically to academic positions. There were like a few these behavioral types of jobs, split up like somewhere halfway academic, halfway policy, that I applied.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, you ended up with a postdoc, which is that's a track into academia, which you said you wanted, so that seems fair to me. If I may ask, and if you don't want to answer the question, we're perfectly happy to edit it out. But you mentioned yourself that, sometimes people got 15 interviews, sometimes people got 4 interviews. Now, it is rather well known that obtaining an interview at all in the academia track is statistically unlikely. So for both you and your cohort, if you prefer to give an average rather than a specific number, that's fine. How many applications do you think you've done?
Yeah, no, I think I did something like 80, and I would have kept going on because there are always some events that or announcements that appear a bit later. But I think my colleagues were doing about the same. There were a couple of outliers who were working full time at the time, and they would really specialize in like central banks and do 20. I think this is the least that I know, but it seemed to have worked out for everyone. So doing this wide search or concentrating on something special, yeah, both seem to work.
And what was sort of the ratio of applications to expected interviews? Because I've had friends who've gone through the job market and the ratios just seem insane. Like, yeah, what was it like in sort of your experience, or just you can talk about, I guess, the average about your cohort as well, if you prefer.
Yeah, no, so I got, so there are these 2 stages, interviews and flyouts, and flyouts, they were basically very similar in this pandemic where you were not flying anywhere. But so I got like 10, 11 interviews, and then like 3 or 4, 3 flyouts. And so usually what they say is like for every interview, for 5 interviews, you get 1 flyout. For 3 flyouts, you get 1 job offer. So these are the ones from previous years, but
sure.
I'm not sure how it went for others exactly. Something similar. So there were not so many interviews, I think, but then people ended up getting flyouts and job offers in the end.
Yeah, no, fair enough, and I'm glad everyone in your cohort seemed to have done well, as you stated. That's always a relief. We love to hear it. In general, you've identified essentially 2 strategies for going about entering the job market, which is a very targeted search, which does seem to be more time efficient. As you said, this was mostly employed by people with full-time work already, so that makes a lot of sense. And a slightly wider search, so a more wide cost approach to obtaining a job, in your case specifically a postdoc in behavioral economics. Why did you choose to do a more wider search?
Good question. And in hindsight, I don't think it really paid off. So I think I would have gotten about excluding one case, the same had I just concentrated on purely behavioral and experimental jobs. So It seems that going wide doesn't pay off that well. But then again, I got a little short-term deal for the gap between the postdoc starting and my PhD scholarship ending from applying to a position I knew I was not qualified. And then they come back to me saying, look, by the way, you didn't get that position, but we are really interested in your skill set. We are doing something short term. You want to join in? And I'm like, look, yes, I have this break. And sort of it worked out. But in general, it's people want safe choices. If they're looking for experimental economists, they want an experimental economist. If they're looking for micro, they want somebody perhaps that's more micro than experimental.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if someone who's looking for an experimental economist is suddenly hiring a computer scientist. I'll give you that one.
So I'm thinking about this question myself sometimes, but you yourself have been very successful. You've defended your PhD. You've been successful on the job market. But I'm interested in the question of how we define success, particularly in academia. So for you, how do you define success in your life now, in your professional life? And has that changed at all, like since starting the PhD, and for better or for worse, do you think?
Wow, what a difficult question. Has it changed? My perspective has changed a lot. So when I started the PhD, I was like shocked. I'm committing myself for 4 years in this foreign country, and now you're like, okay, give me some job security. Like 4 years sounds excellent. I'll take it. What I enjoy is interacting with interesting scholars, doing interesting projects that might have a timely importance. It's again comes to my personality. If I enjoy doing what I'm doing, I find it as a good thing, and I don't have these sort of big goals that I need to be there in 5 years. So
Fair
as long
enough.
as I'm enjoying, I'm not having a mental breakdown. it's good for me.
That seems like a healthy-ish perspective, I think. But have you felt? I mean, this may be a silly question, but to what degree have you felt the pressure going onto the job market to, have that top 5 publication or to have that outstanding research project and oversell yourself in the way that academia sometimes rewards?
Right. So I'm Finnish, and from there, the culture is be humble and use a lot of self-deprecative humor, and this is where I come from. And for me, this selling and pitching doesn't come naturally at all. So that's one of the reasons why I wish I had done more of it, because in the end, people are only interested in knowing, the punchline, and then,
Sure.
the details later. But I do like ambition. Like the project we are starting, one of the first meetings we had was like, okay, let's say it out loud. We want to have a top 5 publication from this project. So just to let you know, this is the goal. So I like it. I like that we want to do things well, and we want to study something important. So they motivate you, but these are really long-term goals. So you better pick something else as well.
That seems fair. So what exactly would you advise someone who was or is going to be in a position that you have been, going onto the job market and wanting to almost exclusively focus on the academic trajectory? What advice would you give someone going onto the academic job market, if you will?
Talk to a lot of people, like have a lot of interviews, do it on Zoom, talk to, speakers coming to your university, get to know a lot of people. Knowing connections, networks, they are really important. Get your supervisors to advertise you as well. I think their word matters a lot.
All right.
So never underestimate the power of a good network. I think that it makes a lot of sense. And I guess you have to be sort of a bit lucky with your supervisors as well, whether or not they're going to be the type of supervisors who advocate for you. But I mean, I have a bit of an open question, which you can choose to answer or not. We can edit it out. But within economics, we see there is, a leaky pipeline in terms of the split of gender at different levels of the profession. And we're just talking even at gender, but if you go even further, there's even more of a problem in terms of diversity of different ethnicities and backgrounds. So I'm wondering, did you find the job market a fair process? And was there anything that you saw in the job market that might explain why there is such a gender divide? Or do you think the reason why we see this leaky pipeline is, the cause, it comes a bit earlier than the job market?
So based on what I saw, this job market, the tables have turned around. There's a huge demand for women in departments. So I think from this point of view, these years, women are doing quite well. Departments know how bad their statistics look like. They have a huge demand to make them look better. So hence, if you are a good female researcher, I think you have good chances. In terms of if the game is fair for both genders, their family and these sort of things, women are not treated the same as men in this respect. So that's probably a big thing further on in the career. I come from a cohort where we were more women than men, 8-5 in the end. So I had very different experience to most who as women are in the minority in everywhere. And I had really nice committee, for example, that was mostly women. It's coming, and experimental, for example, it's relatively friendly environment for women. What it is for people doing, for example, macroeconomics, I can believe it's a very different story.
Fair enough.
Yeah. It's a good answer. I mean, how do you wrestle with the fact that that departments are looking at their statistics and sort of maybe looking at potentially trying to hire more women? How do you wrestle with that personally and trying to avoid feeling like an imposter for getting interviews and stuff?
No, so I think it's a good thing. We are looking at discrimination. My colleagues have done a sort of more ethnicity-based discrimination, and we're going to expand this to gender. And I was thinking about the problem, and I sort of flipped it entirely around. Like, in my experience, when I think I know something, other people don't believe me. Like, if I say, look, the heater is broken, we need a mechanic to come and fix it, my landlady was like, no, but can you ask the guy upstairs to come and fix it? And I'm like, it's broken. And I wasn't believed because, I'm a young woman. What do I know about technology? It was broken.
Okay.
So sort of, I have a different perspective on some things, and maybe it's a good thing to have a woman or two in the team, especially if you're looking into gender or these sort of things. But yeah, so I think just breaking the barrier, having some representation is really important. Whether we should aim at 50-50, this I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I think it's a very fair argument to be like, you don't need to hire me because I'm a woman and you need to worry about your statistics. You need to hire me because my perspective is not represented, and my perspective in this case might actually be better, and you should be hiring people who are the best. And there is a very fair argument to be made.
Yeah, and it's not even that it's better. It's just that your perspective is important, and it's good to hear all the sides. It's different, not necessarily better.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, in this case, this heater was broken, so your perspective was just the right perspective. So there you go. You can't really make much more of that. So I guess as a closing question, you said yourself you don't exactly have 5-year plans. Don't worry about having those. If this works for you, please don't have 5-year plans. I find them very stressful, and I've got multiple of them. how do you see your future, or are there any key things that you want to achieve, not necessarily within 5 years, but how would you like to see yourself and your research develop?
So I'm really excited about this upcoming field experiment that we're going to do. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm going to learn a lot of skills there. And then, once we are starting to close this project and, it's more about publishing and so on, I hope to get my own ideas started, get some more responsibility in that way. I want to teach. I know it's not a very appreciated thing in the job market necessarily, but get some experience in that. Just collaborate with more people. Yeah, those are my in my 5-year plan.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Yeah, all good and achievable goals, which is important. Setting achievable goals. Yes. Yeah. Basically, the last question we always ask, we give you an opportunity to plug anything you'd like to at the end of this episode. Where would you like to direct the listener towards online?
I have my website. You can find everything about me there. I'm so sorry. Again, I'm finished. I can't sell anything.
On which social media are you active?
I'm starting on Twitter. I'm having this as my academic sort of social media. So I'm starting there. There's not much, but hopefully more to come.
So for the audience, what is your Twitter handle?
Essi Economist, because my last name will do it. Impossible.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, good luck starting your foray into the academic Twitter universe. We'll make sure that your Twitter and your personal website, your professional website, is linked down below for the listener if they want to just click over and learn a bit more about you. Sorry, that must have been very embarrassing to plug yourself and to try and promote yourself. Totally understand. But at least from us, what we want to say is thank you very much for speaking honestly and openly to us. We really appreciated you and your time today.
Thanks a lot for this. It was very cool.
So that was us talking to Essi, and I think we learned a lot about her PhD. The one thing that stood out to me that she mentioned specifically during her PhD, not for her career afterwards, is that her supervisor has a policy that they write the first paper properly together, as in you get a lot of support on that. It sounds like it would work really well. Someone to help you out, someone to give you a structure, someone to tell you this is how it's done. Now it's up to you. Now you're on your own. But you've had a lot of support from the start. How do you feel about that?
From what Essi was telling us, it was something that was really helpful for her at that stage of the PhD, of working on something and it's just not coming together, and you're looking at your own project being like, was this really interesting to begin with? But almost as an exercise of seeing how someone with more experience can package and present research in sort of written form, and it can massively change your perception. Oh wait, when someone else writes about it, now it's really interesting. Now it's something that I'm passionate about again. That was something that stood up for our conversation as well, as something that feels unusual for the PhD experience, but was super impactful. I can understand why PhD supervisors don't offer this as a service, because it is quite labor intensive. But yeah, I think Essi had a bit of a gem of a supervisor there, I have to say.
Yeah, I would argue so. I think, having had a supervisor who was like, the first one we actually properly do together, which to some extent I would argue is co-authorship, because I have my supervisors on all of my papers where I'm just like, I'm not entirely sure this is what co-authorship means specifically, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah. And huge congratulations to Essi for securing her postdoc during the pandemic. It was really helpful for us to get a glimpse of what it's like to be on the job market and what it sort of takes in terms of job applications in order to get a job on the academic market. I think it's something you only really learn about by talking to your cohort or people who are just a year or two ahead of you. So it's nice that we can share it a bit more openly to help people set their expectations of, the sort of rule of thumb of 85 plus applications in order to get maybe one or two interviews or callbacks or something ridiculous, some ridiculous ratio which you would laugh at and think,
it's definitely a numbers game, but the numbers aren't looking good. Absolutely, to anyone who can hack it in that environment, props to you. I'm impressed with your resilience, I'm impressed with your work, and I wish you all the best in the new job. That's all I can really say. But guys, I think that is it for today's episode. We hope you thought it was entertaining, educational, interesting, maybe even a bit thought-provoking. And we hope that you have a great week, and we hope to see you again next week.
You're the dummy that don't believe in science. All your projects always be denying. You're the one I love